The widowed millionaire's triplets bit every nanny until the poor waitress made them smile. The dining room of the Whitmore mansion smelled like expensive disinfectant and something harder to name despair. Maybe, or the kind of exhaustion that settles into walls when nobody's laughing anymore. 3 small voices bounced off the marble floors, not the playful kind of noise you'd expect from kids, but something sharper, desperate. Grace Miller pushed through the service door with a stack of takeout containers balanced against her hip, rain dripping from her red apron onto the pristine tile. She was late. Traffic had been a nightmare. Mrs. Patterson, the head cook, hated when the dinner order came in cold. But the second Grace stepped into that hallway, the complaints died in her throat. A crash, glass shattering against an Italian marble wall, then another scream, raw, frustrated. The kind that comes from a body that doesn't know how else to say stop. Grace froze, containers still in hand, and watched through the half-open door as chaos unfolded in the grand sitting room. 3 little boys, maybe 4 years old, identical except for the different ways they were falling apart. One was actually biting, the wrist of a woman in a crisp white uniform. Another had just launched what looked like a sippy cup across the room. The third was curled up behind a leather couch, hands clamped over his ears, rocking. Enough. The voice cut through the noise like a blade. Benjamin Whitmore stood in the doorway, his suit rumpled, tie loose, dark circles under his eyes that looked like they'd been there for years. Get them out of here. I don't care how to just do it. The woman with the bitten wrist, probably the nanny, was already backing away, shaking her hand out. Mr. Whitmore, I've tried everything. Then you're done. His tone was flat, cold, the kind of cold that comes from someone who's been drowning for so long they've forgotten what air tastes like. Grace should have kept walking, should have dropped off the food, collected her tip, and gotten back on the bus to her cramped studio apartment. But something about those kids, something about the way the smallest one was rocking, hands pressed so hard against his head it had to hurt, made her think of herself at 6 years old, sitting in a too-bright hospital hallway while her mom coughed herself to death 3 rooms away. Nobody had helped then. Nobody had even noticed before she could talk herself out of it. Grace set the containers down on a side table and stepped into the room. Can I try? Every head turned. The nanny looked offended. Benjamin looked skeptical, and standing near the fireplace, clipboard in hand, an expression sharp as cut glass, was a woman Grace had seen around but never spoken to, Evelyn Brooks. The estate manager, she smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. This is a private family matter, Evelyn said smoothly, her voice all practiced politeness. We have trained professionals handling. Yeah, I can see how well that's going. Grace hadn't meant to sound so blunt, but exhaustion made her honest. She gestured toward the kids. Look, I'm not trying to step on anyone's toes. I know what it's like when everything's too much. Let me try. 5 minutes. Benjamin stared at her for a long moment, like he was trying to decide if she was insane or just stupid. Finally, he exhaled, sharp, frustrated. Fine. 5 minutes. Evelyn's smile tightened, but she said nothing. Grace moved slowly, deliberately, keeping her body language loose. She'd learned a long time ago that people, especially scared people, could read tension like a language. She crouched down a few feet away from the boys, not reaching out, not demanding anything. The one who'd thrown the cup was watching her now, chest heaving, fists still clenched. The biter had retreated to a corner, eyeing her with deep suspicion. The one behind the couch hadn't moved. Hey, Grace said quietly, barely louder than a whisper. I'm Grace. You don't have to talk to me if you don't want to. No response, just 3 pairs of eyes, wide and wary. She pulled off her damp apron and draped it over the back of a chair, then sat down cross-legged on the floor. Slowly, she rolled up the sleeves of her shirt and took a deep breath, long, deliberate, loud enough for them to hear. Then another, and another. The rhythm was steady, calm. She didn't look at them directly, just kept her gaze soft, unfocused, like she was the most relaxed person in the world. After a minute, she hummed, low and quiet, a tune her mom used to sing when the lights in their apartment building would flicker and scare her. It was nothing fancy, just a melody about wind through windows and quiet nights. One of the boys, one who'd been biting, tilted his head slightly. Grace kept humming, pulling her phone out of her pocket and setting it on the floor between them. She tapped the screen until the same melody started playing, soft and tinny through the cheap speaker. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a small bag of baby carrots she'd packed for her own dinner. She set them on a napkin, arranged by size, and didn't offer them, just left them there. The boy who'd thrown the cup crept a little closer, not much. Just enough. Grace didn't move. Slowly, so slowly, the one behind the couch peeked out. His hands were still over his ears, but his breathing had changed, quieter, less frantic. She met his eyes for just a second and nodded once. "You're okay. I'm not going anywhere." The biter picked up a carrot, sniffed it, took a cautious bite, and then, like someone had turned down the volume on the whole world, the crying stopped. The silence was so sudden it felt heavy. Grace kept humming, kept breathing, and one by one, the boy settled. The one by the couch leaned forward and rested his forehead, just barely against her forearm. She didn't move, didn't speak, just let him stay there. When she finally looked up, Benjamin was staring at her like she'd just performed a magic trick. His expression was unreadable, somewhere between disbelief and something that might have been grief. Evelyn, on the other hand, looked like she'd just swallowed glass. Her fingers tightened around her clipboard. "What did you do?" Benjamin's voice was hoarse. Grace shrugged. "I just listened." He blinked, like that didn't make any sense. Maybe it didn't. But before he could say anything else, the boy with his head against her arm whispered something, so quiet Grace almost missed it. Again, she smiled just a little and started humming once more. Benjamin crossed the room slowly, carefully, like he was afraid of breaking whatever fragile peace had settled over the space. He crouched down beside Grace, and for the first time in what felt like years, he looked at his sons, really looked, and saw them breathing easy. And then he heard it, the melody, the same one Rachel used to sing when the boys wouldn't sleep, back when they were newborns, and the world still made sense. His throat tightened. "Where did you learn that song?" His voice cracked. Grace glanced at him, surprised. "I don't know. My mom used to sing it." "Why?" Benjamin didn't answer, couldn't. He just stood up, ran a hand through his hair, and walked to the window, staring out at the rain. Evelyn stepped forward, her smile back in place, perfectly controlled. "Well, that was fortunate. But Mr. Whitmore, we should discuss." "She stays." Evelyn's smile faltered. "I'm sorry." Benjamin turned, and for the first time since Grace had walked into that room, his voice had weight behind it. 1 week. Let's see if this was luck or something more. Grace's heart hammered in her chest. She nodded, trying to keep her expression steady even though her hands were shaking. Evelyn's eyes narrowed, just slightly, "Of course, Mr. Whitmore. Whatever you think is best." But as Grace gathered her things and followed a staff member toward the guest quarters, she caught Evelyn's reflection in a hallway mirror, and the look on her face wasn't polite anymore. It was cold, calculating, and it promised trouble. Grace woke up to sunlight streaming through curtains that probably cost more than her entire year's rent. The guest room they'd given her was bigger than her studio apartment, king-sized bed, marble bathroom, a view of gardens she'd only seen from the service entrance. For a second, lying there in sheets that felt like clouds, she almost forgot why she was here. Then she heard it. A muffled thump from down the hall, followed by a cry. She was out of bed and halfway down the corridor before her brain caught up with her feet, still wearing the oversized t-shirt she'd slept in. The crying wasn't the desperate kind from yesterday, more frustrated than scared, but it still made her chest tight. The nursery door was cracked open inside. One of the triplets, she thought it might be the one who'd hidden behind the couch, was pulling at his shirt collar, his face red and scrunched up. A woman Grace didn't recognize was trying to wrestle a sweater over his head. "Come on, sweetie, just put your arms through. Stop." Grace's voice came out sharper than she meant it to. The woman looked up, startled. "Excuse me." Grace stepped inside, holding up her hands in apology. "Sorry, I didn't mean to snap. It's just the tag." "Look." She pointed to the label sticking out from the collar, scratching against the boy's neck with every movement. "It's bothering him." The woman, another nanny, Grace assumed, frowned. "It's just a tag." "Yeah." But Grace knelt down to the boy's level, meeting his watery eyes. "Hey buddy, that itches, doesn't it?" She mimed, scratching her own neck, exaggerating the discomfort. He nodded, sniffling. Grace looked back at the nanny. "Do you have scissors? Or I can just turn it inside out for now." The woman hesitated, clearly unsure whether to take orders from someone who'd literally arrived yesterday. But finally handed over the sweater. Grace flipped it inside out, cutting the tag off with a small pair of craft scissors from the art table. When she helped him put it back on slowly, letting him guide his own arms through, he relaxed immediately. "Better?" Grace asked. Another nod, this time with the ghost of a smile. The nanny was already leaving, muttering something about making everything so complicated. Grace pretended not to hear. She spent the next 20 minutes just sitting on the floor with the boy Lucas. According to the name embroidered on his blanket, building a tower out of soft blocks, he didn't talk. But he handed her blocks with careful precision, and that felt like enough by the time she made it to the kitchen for coffee. The house was already humming with activity, staff moving through hallways like choreographed dancers. Everyone with a purpose and a place. Grace felt like an imposter in her jeans and yesterday's shirt. Mrs. Patterson, the cook, handed her a mug without being asked. "Heard you worked a miracle yesterday." Grace wrapped her hands around the warm ceramic and shrugged. "Just got lucky, I think. Luck doesn't make those boys stop screaming, Mrs. Patterson lowered her voice, glancing toward the hallway. "Between you and me, we've been through 8 nannies in 6 months. Professional ones, the kind with degrees and references. What happened to them? Quit. Every single one." She wiped down the counter, her movements brisk and efficient, those boys. "They're not easy, and Mr. Whitmore, God love him. He's barely here, just work and more work, trying to outrun his grief." Grace took a sip of coffee, strong and bitter, exactly what she needed, and Mrs. Evelyn, Mrs. Patterson's expression shifted. Something guarded sliding behind her eyes. She runs a tight ship, keeps everything organized. "Mr. Whitmore depends on her." It wasn't quite an answer, but Grace knew better than to push. She'd worked enough service jobs to recognize when someone was choosing their words carefully. She spent the rest of the morning with the boys, learning their rhythms. Ethan, the one who'd thrown the cup-like things in order. He arranged his toys by color and size, and got upset when Grace accidentally put a blue block with the greens. Noah, the biter, needed space. If you got too close too fast, he'd tense up like a cornered animal. And Lucas, sweet, quiet Lucas, just needed someone to be there, not talking, not demanding, just present. Grace started a notebook, a cheap spiral one she'd grabbed from the corner store on her way back last night. She wrote down everything: what time each boy woke up, what they ate, what made them smile, what made them shut down. Patterns started to emerge. Too much noise, especially high-pitched or sudden, sent them into sensory overload. Bright lights made them squint and retreat. Textures mattered more than she'd ever realized. She was scribbling notes about Noah's reaction to scratchy fabrics when Evelyn appeared in the doorway of the playroom. "Miss Miller," a word. Grace set down her pen. Sure, Evelyn's office was everything Grace expected. Immaculate. Organized, cold, even the plants on the windowsill looked like they'd been arranged by an interior designer. "Please, sit." Evelyn gestured to a chair across from her desk. Grace sat, feeling suddenly very aware of her thrift store jeans and the coffee stain on her sleeve. Evelyn folded her hands on the desk, her smile professional and distant. "I wanted to check in, see how you're adjusting. It's good. The boys are. They're great, actually. Wonderful." Evelyn's smile didn't waver. "I should mention that we run a very structured household here. Routines, schedules, professional standards. Mr. Whitmore values consistency." Grace nodded slowly. "Of course, I notice you've been improvising, cutting tags off clothing, rearranging meal presentations, playing music during quiet time." Evelyn tilted her head slightly. "While I appreciate creativity, we do have established protocols. The protocols weren't working," Grace said carefully. "The boys were miserable. Children often resist what's good for them." Evelyn's tone was patient, like she was explaining something to a child. "That's why we have trained professionals. People with degrees in child development and behavioral psychology. People who aren't you," Grace heard beneath the words. "I'm just trying to help." "Of course you are." Evelyn stood, signaling the end of the conversation. "Just remember, this is a trial period, 1 week. Let's see how things develop." Grace left the office feeling like she'd just been warned, even though Evelyn hadn't said anything overtly threatening. It was the tone, the careful placement of words, the reminder that Grace was temporary, replaceable. She found the boys in the sunroom, where lunch had been set up, but something was wrong. The carefully separated plates she'd arranged that morning, proteins on one side, vegetables on another. Everything organized the way Ethan liked it had been mixed together. Worse, someone had added hot sauce to Noah's chicken, and he was crying, rubbing at his mouth. What happened? Grace grabbed a napkin, helping Noah wipe his tongue. The staff member setting up lunch looked genuinely confused. "I don't know." "That's how it came from the kitchen." Grace's jaw tightened. She glanced back toward Evelyn's office, remembering that patient warning smile. 1 week. She spent the afternoon rebuilding trust, new plates, new food, extra patience by dinner. The boys were calm again, but Grace felt exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical work. That evening, after the boys were in bed, she sat in her room with her notebook open, writing down everything that had happened. The mixed-up lunch, the way Evelyn had emphasized professional standards, the missing noise-canceling headphones she'd borrowed, and the therapy room vanished from where she'd left them. Maybe it was paranoia, maybe she was reading too much into things, but growing up poor had taught Grace to pay attention to patterns, and this pattern felt deliberate. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through job listings, just in case. Waitress positions, retail gigs, anything that could keep her rent paid if this fell apart. But then she thought about Lucas resting his head against her arm, about the way Ethan had smiled when his blocks were organized just right, about Noah finally relaxing enough to fall asleep during story time. 1 week she could survive, 1 week she had to, because those boys deserved someone who'd fight for them. Even if it meant fighting the people who were supposed to protect them. Grace closed her notebook and set it on the nightstand, next to the small metal tin where she kept her savings coins and crumpled bills. Everything she'd managed to scrape together. Tomorrow, she'd be ready for whatever came next. Day 3 started with a small victory. All 3 boys sat at the breakfast table without a single meltdown. Lucas with his oatmeal, Noah with his dry toast cut into precise squares, Ethan with his yogurt in a blue bowl because blue was his color for Wednesdays. Grace had learned that fast, colors mattered. Patterns mattered, predictability was everything. She was writing it all down in her notebook. Wednesday equals blue, Thursday equals green, Friday equals yellow when she noticed something off. The stack of sensory toys she'd organized yesterday, arranged by texture from softest to roughest, had been scrambled. The weighted blanket Lucas used during quiet time was missing, and the small bottle of lavender oil she'd been using to help them wind down before naps, gone. Grace stood in the playroom, hands on her hips, staring at the chaos. This wasn't the boys. They didn't randomize things, they organized things. This was someone else. She glanced toward the hallway, where she could hear Evelyn's heels clicking against marble. Growing distant. Okay, so that's how it's going to be. Grace started documenting everything. She used her phone to photograph the playroom before and after each session. She took pictures of the boys' clothes, the tags that irritated them, the seams that rubbed wrong, the fabrics they actually tolerated. She saved receipts from her own pocket money when she bought replacement items the house somehow ran out of: soft cotton shirts, unscented soap, the specific brand of crackers Noah would actually eat. It felt paranoid. It felt necessary. That afternoon, she found an ally in the most unexpected place. Marcus Webb had worked security at the Whitmore estate for 6 years. Grace had seen him on her evening walks around the grounds, a tall man in his 50s with kind eyes and a thermos of coffee that never seemed to run empty. She'd nodded politely in passing, never thinking much of it. But that night, when she couldn't sleep and wandered down to the kitchen for water, she found him at the staff table, staring at a photo on his phone. "Sorry," Grace said. Already backing up, didn't mean to interrupt. "You're not." Marcus gestured to the chair across from him. "Can't sleep either." Grace hesitated, then sat. The kitchen was quiet at this hour, just the hum of the industrial fridge and the distant sound of rain starting up outside. Marcus turned his phone toward her. The photo showed a boy, maybe 7 or 8, with bright eyes and hands pressed over his ears. "My son, Daniel, he'd be 14 now, would be." Grace's voice was soft. "Car accident, 3 years ago." Marcus's jaw tightened. He had sensory processing issues, got overwhelmed easy, loud noises, bright lights. Too many people, it all got to be too much sometimes. Grace felt something click into place. The triplets remind you of him. "Yeah." Marcus poured coffee into a second mug without asking and slid it across the table. "I see the way they react to things, the covering their ears, the need for everything to be just so. Daniel was like that. Took us years to figure out what he needed, what'd help." Grace wrapped her hands around the warm mug. Patience, routine, people who actually listened, instead of trying to fix him. Marcus met her eyes. "You're doing good with them. I've been watching. First person in months who's actually paying attention." Grace felt her throat tighten. "Thanks. I'm trying, but I think someone's making it harder than it needs to be." Marcus took a slow sip of coffee. "You mean the missing equipment? The mixed up schedules, the accidents, so he'd notice too. I'm not imagining it." Grace asked. "You're not imagining it." Marcus set down his mug. "Look, I've worked here a long time, Mrs. Brooks runs a tight ship. Nobody's denying that. But she doesn't like variables, doesn't like things she can't control. And you, Miss Miller, you're a variable Grace, and I'm just trying to help those kids. I know. That's why I'm telling you this. Marcus leaned forward, his voice dropping. There are cameras all over this house. Some of them work. Some of them supposedly don't been broken for months, according to the maintenance logs. Grace's pulse quickened. Supposedly, I maintain the security system. Those cameras aren't broken. He let that sink in. But if someone wanted footage to disappear, all they'd need is administrative access to delete it. Evelyn has that access. Marcus didn't confirm or deny, but his silence was answer enough. Grace thought about the scrambled toys, the missing equipment, the sabotaged lunch, if there was footage of who'd done it. Could I see the recordings? She asked. Not without cause. Not without Mr. Whitmore's authorization. Marcus stood, rinsing his mug in the sink. But if something were to happen, something that needed investigation, those recordings would be available. Just saying, he headed for the door, then paused. My boy didn't get the help he needed until we found someone who actually gave a damn. Don't let them run you off, Grace. Those kids need you. After he left, Grace sat alone in the quiet kitchen, her mind racing. She had an ally now, someone who understood, someone who was paying attention. She spent the next 2 days being hyper-vigilant. She documented everything, took photos, made notes, kept a timeline. When the noise-canceling headphones reappeared in the wrong storage bin, she photographed them before putting them back. When Noah's lunch showed up with mystery spices that made him cry, she saved a sample in a plastic bag and wrote down the time and date. Her notebook filled up fast. Tuesday 10:15 a.m., sensory swing moved to storage. Boys had meltdown during occupancy therapy. Tuesday 2:30 p.m., found swing, noticed dust pattern suggests recent movement. Wednesday 8:0 a.m., Lucas's weighted blanket in laundry despite being clean yesterday. On Thursday, Dr. Samuel Chun came for his weekly checkup. Grace had been warned about him by Mrs. Patterson. Very professional, very by the book. Doesn't suffer fools. He arrived at exactly 10 a.m., medical bag in hand, wire-rimmed glasses catching the light. Evelyn greeted him personally, all smiles and efficiency. Dr. Chun, wonderful to see you. The boys are in the playroom with our new assistant, not caregiver, not nanny, assistant. Grace pretended not to notice the demotion, Doctor. Chun entered the playroom like he was approaching a potential crime scene, cautious, observant, ready for chaos. But the boys were calm. Lucas was arranging blocks. Noah was doing a puzzle. Ethan was looking at a picture book, turning pages with careful concentration. The doctor stopped in the doorway, visibly surprised. "Good morning," Grace said quietly, not wanting to disrupt the peace. "Good morning, doctor." Chun moved closer, watching the boys with clinical interest. "How long have they been like this?" "About 20 minutes. We just finished snack time, and before that, morning routine. Breakfast at 7:30, then sensory play. Just textures, nothing overstimulating. Then we did some quiet reading, doctor." Chun pulled out a small notepad. "What's the routine look like exactly?" Grace walked him through it, the visual schedule she'd created with simple pictures, the way she gave 5-minute warnings before transitions, how she let them choose between 2 options, so they felt some control. She showed him the color-coded days, the specific way plates needed to be arranged, the volume level that worked for background music. "Where did you study early childhood development, doctor?" Chun asked. I pay attention." He looked at her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. "May I see your notes?" Grace hesitated, then handed over her notebook. She watched his face as he read through her observations, the patterns she'd identified, the triggers she'd documented, the small accommodations that made enormous differences. "This is remarkable," he said finally. "These are classic signs of sensory processing sensitivity. The light sensitivity, the auditory defensiveness, the tactile issues, it's all here. Is that bad?" "It's not bad. It's just how they experience the world," Dr. Chun looked at the boys, then back at Grace. "But it requires specific support, occupational therapy, environmental modifications, caregiver training. It's not something you can just discipline away." Grace thought about the spray bottles she'd found in storage, the kind labeled bitter apple that people used to stop dogs from chewing furniture. She thought about the way some of the staff talked about teaching them to behave. "Doctor Chun, can I show you something?" She pulled out her phone and showed him the photos she'd taken, the scrambled toys, the records of accidents, the pattern of sabotage. His expression grew darker with each image. "Who's responsible for this?" he asked. I don't know for sure, but I have suspicions, Doctor. Chun closed her notebook and handed it back. Keep documenting everything, and call me if anything escalates. He pulled out a business card with his personal cell written on the back. I mean it. Anytime. As he left, Grace saw him pause to speak with Evelyn in the hallway. She couldn't hear what was said. But Evelyn's smile had gone brittle that evening. Grace found a chocolate bar on her pillow, the expensive kind from the gourmet shop in town. No note, but when she asked Mrs. Patterson about it the next morning, the cook just winked. Someone appreciates what you're doing, dear. Grace saved the wrapper, adding it to her growing collection of evidence that she wasn't alone in this fight. She had Marcus, she had Dr. Chun, she had Mrs. Patterson's quiet support, and she had 3 little boys who were finally starting to trust her. It would have to be enough. The sabotages stopped being subtle on day 5. Grace woke to chaos, the kind that makes your stomach drop before your brain fully processes what's wrong. Down the hall, all 3 boys were screaming, not the frustrated crying she'd learned to navigate, but raw, panicked shrieks that sounded like pain. She ran barefoot down the corridor, nearly colliding with one of the day staff outside the nursery. What happened? Grace pushed past her into the room. The boys were in their beds, clawing at their pajamas, faces red and tear-streaked. The smell hit her immediately. Something chemical and sharp, burning her nostrils. Oh my God. Grace started stripping Lucas out of his shirt, her hands shaking. His skin was blotchy and red. What is this? I don't know. The staff member, Grace thought her name was Jennifer, looked genuinely panicked. I just put them to bed like always. I used the regular detergent. This isn't regular detergent. Grace's voice came out harder than she meant it to. She got Lucas into a clean shirt from the drawer, then moved to Noah, who was scratching at his arms hard enough to leave marks. Get Dr. Chun on the phone. Now it took an hour to calm them down. Cool baths, hydrocortisone cream, soft cotton clothes that hadn't been washed, and whatever chemical nightmare had contaminated the others. Dr. Chun arrived within 30 minutes and confirmed what Grace already knew. Contact dermatitis. Likely from an irritant in the laundry. I'll need to see the detergent, he said, already making notes, but when they checked the laundry room, the bottle was gone. In its place was the regular gentle, fragrance-free brand they always used. Grace photographed the empty space where the contaminated bottle should have been, added it to her growing file. Evelyn appeared in the doorway, concern etched across her features in a performance so practiced it almost looked real. How terrible. We'll need to investigate how this happened, of course. Perhaps someone used the wrong product by mistake. Maybe Grace didn't look at her. Or maybe someone did it on purpose. The temperature in the room dropped about to 10 degrees. That's quite an accusation, Miss Miller. Evelyn's voice stayed pleasant, but there was steel underneath, especially from someone with no training in household management. I have eyes. That's enough, Doctor. Chun cleared his throat, breaking the tension, regardless of cause. The boys need monitoring for the next 24 hours. I'll prescribe antihistamines if the reaction worsens. He looked at Grace. Can you handle that? Yes. After he left, Evelyn lingered. Mr. Whitmore should know about this incident. I'll brief him this evening. I'm sure you will, Grace said quietly. That evening, Benjamin finally showed up. Grace hadn't seen him since that first day he'd been traveling for work. According to Mrs. Patterson, he looked worse than before, if that was possible. More tired, more hollowed out. She found him in his study, staring at a laptop screen without really seeing it. Mr. Whitmore. Grace knocked on the open door. He looked up, startled. Grace, I heard about today, Evelyn said. I'm sure she did. Grace stepped inside, closing the door behind her. Can I tell you my version? Something in her tone made him sit back. Go ahead. She told him everything, not just today, but the whole week. The sabotaged meals, the missing equipment, the pattern of accidents that kept undoing every bit of progress she made with the boys. She showed him her notebook, her photos, her timeline. Benjamin listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. These are serious allegations, he said finally. I know. Evelyn has been with his family for 8 years. She was here when my wife... His voice cracked slightly. She helped me through the worst time of my life. Grace felt something twist in her chest. I'm not saying she's a bad person. I'm saying something isn't right, and you've been here less than a week. The words hung between them like a verdict. Grace stood up. You're right. I'm nobody, just some waitress who got lucky once. But those boys are getting better. Mr. Whitmore, even with everything working against us, they're improving. Doesn't that count for something? It does. He rubbed his face. Exhausted. But I need proof. Real proof, not just suspicions and bad luck. What kind of proof would you need? Benjamin looked at her, and for the first time she saw something other than grief in his eyes. Maybe doubt, maybe curiosity. Give me until the end of the week. If you can show me concrete evidence that someone is actively sabotaging your work, I'll investigate properly. But if this is just coincidence, if you're looking for conspiracy where there's only chaos, then we need to reconsider this arrangement. It wasn't the support she'd hoped for, but it was something. Fair enough, Grace said. That night she couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Benjamin's question. What kind of proof? Photos weren't enough. Notes weren't enough. She needed something undeniable. She needed those security recordings Marcus had mentioned. Around 2 a.m. she gave up on sleep and went downstairs for water. Marcus was at his usual spot in the kitchen, coffee in hand. Rough night, he asked. Grace told him about the detergent, about Benjamin's ultimatum, about her rapidly closing window to prove what was happening. Marcus listened, then said quietly, "The laundry room has a camera." Grace's pulse quickened. "Does it work?" "It does. But accessing that footage requires Mr. Whitmore's direct authorization or a security incident report." "What counts as a security incident? Theft, vandalism, threat to residents?" Marcus took a sip of coffee. "Chemical contamination of children's clothing that results in a doctor visit might qualify." "Might. I'd need to file a formal report. Mr. Whitmore would have to approve the review." He met her eyes. "But once it's filed, it goes on record. Can't be buried or deleted without leaving a trail." Grace thought about Evelyn's warning smile, about Benjamin's exhausted doubt, about 3 little boys who deserved better than this. "File it," she said. The next day felt like waiting for a storm to hit. Grace went through the motions: breakfast, playtime, therapy, exercises, but her mind was elsewhere. Marcus had submitted the security incident report that morning. Benjamin would have it by noon. The boys sensed her distraction. Lucas stayed close, watching her with worried eyes. Noah was more aggressive than usual, biting his sleeve when he got frustrated. Ethan kept organizing and reorganizing his toys, seeking control in the only way he knew how. "I'm sorry, guys," Grace murmured during quiet time, sitting on the floor with them. "I'm here. I promise." Lucas climbed into her laps, something he'd never done before. Just sat there, his small body trusting and warm. Grace wrapped her arms around him and felt her resolve harden. At 3 p.m., a different staff member appeared to supervise Grace's session with the boys. At 4 p.m., Evelyn personally delivered afternoon snacks, something she'd never done before. At 5 p.m., Benjamin requested that Grace come to his study after dinner. "Bring your notebook," his message said. Grace's hands shook as she fed the boys their dinner. "Got them bathed and ready for bed." Mrs. Patterson gave her an encouraging nod as she passed through the kitchen. Marcus caught her eye from his post by the door and tapped his watch twice. "It's time." Benjamin's study felt different this time. The laptop was closed. A folder sat on the desk, official looking. Evelyn stood by the window, her posture perfect, her expression carefully neutral. "Sit," Benjamin said. Grace sat. He opened the folder. "I reviewed Marcus's security report. I also had our IT department pull footage from the past week." Grace's heart hammered, and Benjamin looked at Evelyn, then back at Grace. The footage from the laundry room was corrupted. "Technical glitch. Apparently we can't see who switched the detergent." Grace felt the floor drop out from under her. "However," Benjamin continued, "there are other recordings. Hallway cameras, kitchen cameras. The footage shows several interesting patterns." He turned the laptop toward her. On the screen, a time-stamped video showed Evelyn entering the playroom after hours, rearranging toys. Another clip showed her switching labeled bottles in the kitchen. A third showed her directing a staff member to fix the boys' lunch, plates adding ingredients that weren't on their approved list. "Mrs. Brooks has explanations for each of these," Benjamin said quietly. "Quality control checks, menu adjustments, standard household management." Grace looked at Evelyn, who met her gaze without flinching. "But the pattern," Benjamin continued, "concerns me, especially given Dr. Chun's observations about the boys' improvement under your care versus their decline under previous methods, Mr. Whitmore." "I can assure you," Evelyn started. "I'm not finished." Benjamin's voice carried an edge Grace hadn't heard before. He looked at Grace. "You've earned the rest of your week, but I need both of you to understand something. This house has been chaos since Rachel died. These boys have been suffering, and I haven't been present enough to see it." His voice cracked. "That ends now, Grace. You continue your work. Document everything. I want daily reports, Evelyn. You will not enter the children's areas without my explicit permission. Both of you will operate with complete transparency. Is that understood?" Grace nodded. Barely breathing, Evelyn's smile finally slipped. "Of course, Mr. Whitmore," as Grace left the study. Her legs felt like water. She'd bought herself time, but she hadn't won. Not yet, behind her. She heard Evelyn's heels clicking down the hallway, faster than usual. The storm hadn't broken. It had just begun. For exactly 36 hours, Grace let herself believe things might actually work out. The boys were thriving. Lucas had started using words, small ones, just more and please and grace, but each one felt like a miracle. Noah went 2 full days without biting anyone. Ethan built a block tower 17 levels high and didn't melt down when it fell. Just rebuilt it, carefully, his tongue poking out in concentration. Benjamin started coming home earlier, not every night, but enough that the boys noticed. He'd sit on the floor during story time, awkward and uncertain, but there, once. Grace caught him humming, just a few notes of that lullaby, and when their eyes met. He looked away quickly, but not before she saw something raw in his expression. Something like hope. Grace should have known better than to trust it. It was Monday morning when everything fell apart. She was in the kitchen, preparing the boys' snacks, apple slices for Lucas, cheese cubes for Noah, crackers arranged in a specific pattern for Ethan when Evelyn walked in, not unusual. But the woman behind her was tall, severe-looking, with a briefcase and an expression that screamed authority. "Miss Miller," Evelyn said, her voice honey-smooth. "This is Mrs. Victoria Ashford from Child Protective Services." Grace's blood turned to ice. "CPS." She set down the knife she'd been using. Her mind racing. "I don't understand, Mrs. Ashford." Stepped forward. "All business. We received a report concerning the welfare of the Whitmore children. I'm here to conduct an evaluation." "A report about what?" "Allegations of improper care and potential endangerment." Mrs. Ashford pulled out a tablet. "Specifically, claims that you've been using unapproved disciplinary methods and that one of the children has sustained injuries under your supervision. That's insane. I would never. I'm sure we'll get it all sorted out." Evelyn's smile was sympathetic in a way that made Grace want to scream. "It's probably just a misunderstanding." The next 2 hours were a nightmare. Mrs. Ashford interviewed staff members, most of whom Grace barely knew. She examined the boys, checking for bruises, asking them questions they couldn't fully answer. She reviewed medical records and incident reports that Grace had never seen before. Reports that painted her as aggressive, impatient, physically rough with the children. All lies, all documented, all signed by staff members whose names Grace recognized but whose faces she couldn't quite place. The ones who worked early morning shifts or late evening ones. The ones she rarely interacted with. The ones loyal to Evelyn. "I need to see your childcare credentials," Mrs. Ashford said. "I don't have any, Mr. Whitmore hired me anyway because you don't have credentials." Mrs. Ashford made a note. "And you're living on the premises." "Correct. Do you have a background check on file?" Grace's throat tightened. "I don't know, Mr. Whitmore would have. There's no background check in the file." Evelyn's voice was apologetic. "It must have been an oversight. With everything Mr. Whitmore has been dealing with, these administrative details sometimes slip through." It was beautiful, really. Evelyn had thought of everything. By the time Benjamin got home, summoned by an urgent call from his assistant, Mrs. Ashford had made her preliminary recommendation. Grace should be suspended from childcare duties pending a full investigation. "This is ridiculous," Benjamin said, his jaw tight. "Grace has been the best thing to happen to my sons in years. I understand this is difficult." "Mr. Whitmore," Mrs. Ashford replied, "but we have multiple statements alleging concerning behavior. Until we can verify statements from whom, let me see them." Mrs. Ashford hesitated, then showed him the tablet. Grace watched Benjamin's face as he read, saw the moment doubt crept in, just a flicker. "But it was there, some of these incidents, Grace. Did you grab Noah's arm during the detergent situation?" "I was trying to stop him from scratching himself bloody," Grace said. "He was hurting himself." "But you did grab him, to protect him." "Yes. And there's a report here that says you locked Ethan in his room during a tantrum." "I didn't lock him in. I closed the door to reduce stimulation because he was overwhelmed. I sat right outside the whole time. That's standard sensory protocol. For a trained professional, maybe." Evelyn's voice was soft. "Regretful. But Miss Miller, you've admitted you have no formal training. What seems helpful to you might actually be." "Don't." Grace turned to her, and something in her expression made Evelyn take a step back. Don't pretend you care about those boys. You've been sabotaging everything from day one. That's a serious accusation, Mrs. Ashford's pen was poised over her tablet. It's the truth. She's been setting me up since I got here because I'm a threat to her control over this household. Benjamin pinched the bridge of his nose. Grace, please, you're not helping your case. My case. Grace felt something break inside her chest. I don't have a case, do I? She's already won. The silence that followed was damning. Mrs. Ashford closed her tablet. Mr. Whitmore, I'm going to recommend that Miss Miller be removed from childcare duties immediately. You'll need to hire properly credentialed staff while we complete our investigation. If she remains on the premises, she's not to be alone with the children. That's not necessary, Benjamin started. It's protocol. I'm sorry. Grace looked at Benjamin, waiting for him to fight, to defend her, to see through Evelyn's perfect trap. But he just looked tired, defeated. Fine, he said quietly. Grace, I think it's better if you go home, for now, until this gets resolved. The words hit like a physical blow. You're firing me. I'm protecting you. And the boys, if CPS thinks, no. Grace's voice shook. You're giving up. Just like you gave up on them before I got here. Benjamin flinched. That's not fair. None of this is fair. Grace grabbed her apron from the counter, her red apron with the restaurant logo. The one she'd been wearing that first night. Those boys were finally happy. Finally feeling safe. And you're going to let her destroy that because of some paperwork. This isn't about paperwork. It's about their safety. I would never hurt them. You know that. I thought I did. Benjamin wouldn't meet her eyes. But I've been wrong before. That was it. Then, the moment Grace had been dreading since she first walked into this house. The moment when being poor, uneducated, uncredentialed, and expendable caught up with her. She untied her apron and dropped it on the counter. There's something you should know, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. That lullaby I was humming. The one that calmed your sons. I didn't choose it randomly. My mother used to sing it to me when I was scared. Benjamin's head snapped up. But it's not my song. It's Rachel's. Grace pulled something from her pocket. A small oval locket she'd found weeks ago, fallen behind a drawer in the nursery. She'd been meaning to return it, but something had stopped her. I found this. Listen to it. That's where I learned the melody. She set it on the counter between them. Benjamin picked it up with shaking hands, pressed the tiny clasp, a music box mechanism. Delicate and old, played those familiar notes, and then Rachel's voice, soft and loving. For my boys, Mommy always comes back. The sound of Benjamin's sharp inhale was almost a sob. She left them a message, Grace whispered. And somehow, without knowing it, I used it to help them. That's not coincidence, Mr. Whitmore, that's not random. Maybe Rachel knew they'd need someone like me, someone who'd actually listen. Grace, his voice broke, but what do I know? She headed for the door. Her vision blurring with tears she refused to let fall. I'm just a waitress who got lucky once. She was halfway to her room when she heard Lucas crying. Not a tantrum, a heartbroken, bewildered sound that shattered what was left of her composure. Grace stopped, her hand on the stairwell railing. She couldn't go to him. Mrs. Ashford's orders were clear. Behind her, she heard Evelyn's heels clicking victoriously down the hallway. That night, Grace packed her few belongings in the same duffel bag she'd arrived with. The room that had felt like a dream, the big bed, the marble bathroom, the view of the gardens, was just a room again. Borrowed luxury that had never really been hers. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her notebook. Months of observations, patterns, small victories, all meaningless now. Her phone buzzed, a text from Marcus. Don't give up yet. But what choice did she have? Grace lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling, and for the first time since her mother died, she felt truly, utterly alone, somewhere in the house. Lucas was probably still crying, and there was nothing she could do about it. Grace didn't sleep, couldn't, every time she closed her eyes. She saw Lucas's face, confused, hurt, reaching for her as she walked away. She saw the triumph in Evelyn's carefully controlled expression. She saw Benjamin's doubt, and that hurt worst of all, around 3 a.m. She gave up pretending and pulled out her notebook. Spread across the bed were weeks of documentation, photos, receipts, timelines, observations. Evidence of a pattern, but not proof of intent. Nothing concrete enough to override official reports signed by staff members with clean records and no apparent motive to lie. Evelyn had been smart, methodical. She'd built her trap carefully, piece by piece. And Grace had walked right into it. But there was one thing Evelyn might not have accounted for. Grace picked up the locket, turning it over in her hands. The metal was tarnished, the engraving worn, "R wah wah, for my precious boys." Inside that delicate music box mechanism, Rachel's voice, preserved like a prayer. Why had this been hidden behind a drawer? Had someone put it there, deliberately? Or had it simply been lost in the chaos after Rachel's death? Grace opened her phone and started scrolling through her photos, looking for something she'd almost forgotten. There are pictures she'd taken of the nursery during her first week, documenting the original setup before she'd started making changes. In the background, barely visible, was a dresser with its bottom drawer slightly ajar. She zoomed in, behind that drawer. In the gap between wood and wall, she could just make out the edge of something metallic. The locket hadn't fallen accidentally, it had been hidden. Grace's mind raced. If someone had hidden the locket, they'd probably hidden other things too, Rachel's things. Things that might explain why certain people were so invested in maintaining control over this household. She checked the time. 3:47 a.m., the house would be quiet, most of the staff asleep. Security changed shifts at 400, Marcus had mentioned that once. Grace made a decision that was either brave or stupid, possibly both. She got dressed in dark clothes, grabbed her phone, and slipped out of her room. The hallways were dim, lit only by soft night lights along the baseboards. Grace moved quietly, avoiding the creaky floorboard near the landing, staying close to the walls where shadows were deepest. She'd learned the house's rhythms over the past weeks, which doors squeaked, where the security cameras were positioned, when the overnight staff made their rounds. The nursery was dark and still. Grace stood in the doorway, her heart pounding, listening for any sound of the boys' soft breathing, the rustle of blankets. All three were asleep, thank God. She crept to the dresser and carefully pulled out the bottom drawer, then the one above it, reaching into the empty cavity. Her fingers found the narrow space where the locket had been wedged. But there was something else there too, a small bundle wrapped in tissue paper. Pushed far back against the wall, Grace pulled it out and moved to the window where moonlight provided just enough illumination. Inside the tissue was a collection of letters. Tied with a faded ribbon, the handwriting on the envelopes was elegant. "Feminine for my sons, when they're old enough to understand Rachel's letters." Grace's hands trembled as she photographed each envelope without opening them. They weren't meant for her. But she noticed something strange. The dates on the postmarks were all from Rachel's last month of pregnancy. But the letters had never been mailed. They'd been written, sealed, addressed to the boys' future selves, and then hidden. Why would someone hide letters from a dead mother to her children? Unless those letters contained something someone didn't want found. Grace was carefully replacing the bundle when she heard footsteps in the hallway. She froze, barely breathing. The footsteps paused outside the nursery door. "Just checking on them," a voice said quietly. "Evelyn, at 4 in the morning." Another voice, one of the night staff. I couldn't sleep. With all this upheaval, I wanted to make sure they were settling. The doorknob turned. Grace's mind went blank with panic. She couldn't be found here. It would confirm every allegation Evelyn had made. She looked around desperately. Closet too obvious, under the crib too exposed. She dropped flat behind the changing table just as the door opened, pulling her knees to her chest and praying the shadows were deep enough. Evelyn entered, her silhouette backlit by the hallway. She moved to each crib, looking down at the sleeping boys with an expression Grace couldn't read from her hiding spot. Then she went to the dresser, the same dresser Grace had just been searching, and ran her hand along the top drawer, checking something. "Everything all right, Mrs. Brooks?" the staff member asked from the doorway. "Fine, just fine." But Evelyn's voice was tight. She opened the bottom drawer, the one Grace had just closed, and seemed to inspect the space behind it, looking for the letters, making sure they were still hidden, after what felt like an eternity. Evelyn left, closing the door softly behind her. Grace waited 5 full minutes before moving, her legs cramping, her heart hammering so hard she was sure it would wake the boys. When she finally crept out of the nursery, she went straight to the one person she knew would still be awake. Marcus was at his station by the staff entrance. Nursing his eternal coffee, his eyebrows rose when he saw Grace, disheveled and clearly rattled. "Please tell me you're not doing what I think you're doing," he said quietly. "I need to see the security footage. All of it from the past 8 years. Grace." Evelyn hid letters from Rachel to the boys. Personal letters that were supposed to be for them. She just went to check if they're still hidden. At 4 in the morning, Grace pulled out her phone, showing him the photos. Why would she do that unless those letters contain something she doesn't want anyone to see? Marcus studied the photos. His expression troubled. Even if you're right, 8 years of footage is thousands of hours, and I can't just hand over that kind of access without authorization. What about the footage from right after Rachel died, the days immediately following? What are you looking for? I don't know yet. But Evelyn's been in control of this house since Rachel passed. What if that control started with hiding things? What if she's not just protecting her job? What if she's protecting a secret? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed, the sound of a man who knew he was about to cross a line. There's a reason those cameras in the laundry room malfunctioned at the right time. Evelyn has administrative access to the security system. She can delete footage remotely. Can you tell what's been deleted? I can see gaps, timestamps that don't line up, but the actual footage, gone. He paused. There's one thing she might not know about, though. The system creates backup copies automatically stored on a separate server. They're only kept for 90 days before being overwritten, but I never enabled the auto-delete function. Been meaning to, just never got around to it. Marcus's expression was carefully neutral. So theoretically, backups from the past 8 years might still exist. Grace felt hope flare in her chest. Can you access them? Not without leaving a digital trail. But there's a workaround. I can export footage to an external drive for maintenance purposes. Nobody questions it because it's part of my job. How long would that take? For 8 years? Days, maybe weeks, but if you narrow it down to specific time periods, Grace thought fast. The week Rachel died, the week after, and any footage from the past month showing Evelyn entering the children's areas after hours. Marcus nodded slowly. That I can do, but Grace, if this backfires, if you're wrong about what's on those recordings, I'm not wrong. I feel it. Feelings don't hold up in court, then let's find proof that does. By the time Grace made it back to her room, the sky was starting to lighten. She had maybe 3 hours before she was supposed to leave the estate. 3 hours to figure out her next move. She spread everything across the bed. Her notebook, her photos, screenshots of the letters she'd found. There was a pattern here. She just had to find it. Her phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Chun. Heard what happened. This isn't right. Call me. Then another from Mrs. Patterson. Those boys didn't eat breakfast. Won't stop asking for you. Evelyn's furious, and finally from Marcus, got the footage USB drive in your mailbox. Grace, be careful. Grace dressed quickly, grabbed her duffel bag, and went downstairs. The house was waking up. Staff beginning their morning routines. She could hear voices from the kitchen, footsteps on the upper floors. She should leave, get out before things got worse. But as she passed the dining room, she heard it. A small voice, breaking with distress. Want Grace. Want Grace back. Lucas, through the doorway. She could see Evelyn trying to coax the boys into eating. All three were in various states of upset. Evelyn rocking in his chair. Noah with his hands over his ears. Lucas crying those heartbroken tears that made Grace's chest physically ache. Boys, please, Evelyn was saying. Her patience clearly wearing thin. Miss Miller is gone. You need to eat your breakfast like good children. Not good. Lucas's voice was small but defiant. Want Grace? Well, you can't have Grace. She wasn't good for you. Grace didn't make a conscious decision to walk into that room, but suddenly she was there, dropping her duffel bag. And 3 little boys were scrambling out of their chairs and running to her, like she was the only solid thing in a world that kept shifting. She knelt down and caught them all 3 at once. Arms and tears and desperate little hands clutching her shirt. I'm here, she whispered. I'm here. I'm here. I'm here. I'm here. I'm here. Evelyn stood frozen, her expression cycling through shock, anger, and something that might have been fear. You're not supposed to be near them, she said. Voice sharp. Yeah, well, Grace looked up, still holding the boys, and smiled without warmth. I'm not very good at following unjust rules. You need to leave. Now, Evelyn's voice was steel wrapped in silk. Or I'll call security. Go ahead. Grace stood up slowly, keeping the boys close. Lucas had his face buried in her shirt. Noah was gripping her hand like a lifeline, and Ethan had positioned himself between her and Evelyn like a tiny, fierce guardian. Call them. Call Mr. Whitmore. Call whoever you want, Grace. Evelyn's composure was cracking. Just slightly. You're only making this worse for yourself. No, you made it worse. But I'm done playing your game. Footsteps thundered down the hallway. Benjamin appeared in the doorway, still in yesterday's clothes, looking like he hadn't slept. His eyes went from Grace to the boys to Evelyn, trying to piece together what was happening. Grace, what are you doing? I thought you'd left. I need to show you something. Grace pulled the USB drive from her pocket. the one Marcus had left in her mailbox. Security footage, the kind that was supposed to be deleted but wasn't. Benjamin's expression shifted. What are you talking about? Your wife left letters for your sons. Personal letters, meant to be opened when they were older. They were hidden in the nursery, and Evelyn just checked on them this morning at 4 a.m. to make sure they were still hidden. All the color drained from Evelyn's face. That's absurd, she stammered. I was checking on the children after yesterday's stress. Then why did you search behind the dresser drawer? Grace's voice was steady, sharp. Why did you look for something specific in the exact spot where Rachel's letters were hidden? Benjamin turned to Evelyn slowly. Letters? What letters? I don't know what she's talking about. I photographed them. Grace held up her phone. Every envelope, all addressed to Ethan, Noah, and Lucas, written by Rachel in her last month. And you hid them, Mr. Whitmore. This is clearly a desperate attempt to show me. Benjamin's voice was quiet. Dangerous. Show me the footage. Show me the letters. Show me everything. Grace connected the USB drive to her phone and pulled up the video files Marcus had isolated. The timestamp showed the week after Rachel's death, grainy security footage of the nursery. The first clip showed Evelyn entering alone, going directly to the dresser, pulling items out, papers, a small box. The locket. She looked around, then slipped everything behind the bottom drawer, pushing it deep into the space where it wouldn't be easily found. Benjamin's hands were shaking. Why would you? There's more. Grace scrolled to the next file. This one showed Evelyn in the playroom just last week, carefully mixing something into a storage container, the one where they kept the boys' snacks. Another clip showed her adjusting thermostats, making the rooms uncomfortably bright and loud. Another showed her instructing staff members, gesturing with clear authority. While they nodded and took notes, these are all out of context, Evelyn said, but her voice had lost its confidence. I was doing my job. Your job was to hide evidence of Rachel, to sabotage the children's care, to frame me. Grace's voice rose, because that's what this footage shows. Systematic, deliberate sabotage. That's not. I would never. Evelyn looked at Benjamin. And for the first time, Grace saw real fear in her eyes. You have to understand. After Rachel died, this house was chaos. Those boys were impossible. Someone had to maintain order by making them worse. Benjamin's voice was barely above a whisper. By hiding their mother's last words to them, those letters would have upset you. You were barely functional as it was. They weren't yours to hide. The roar came from somewhere deep in Benjamin's chest. Raw and devastated, the boys flinched, and Grace immediately pulled them closer. But Benjamin was past noticing. She was their mother. Those letters were for them, not you, not me. Them. Evelyn took a step back. Then another. I was protecting this family. You were protecting your position. Grace's voice cut through the tension. Rachel probably wrote things in those letters you didn't want anyone to see. Things about the household, about you. You have no idea what you're talking about. Then let's read them. Grace pulled up another photo on her phone, one of the envelope fronts, to be opened on their 18th birthday. That's 10 years from now. What could Rachel have written that you needed to hide for 10 years? The silence that followed was devastating. Benjamin moved toward the door. Mrs. Patterson, call Drive, Chun, and call our family attorney. Now, Mr. Whitmore, please. Evelyn's professional veneer was completely shattered now. I've served this family for 8 years. I helped you through the worst time of your life, by lying to me, by hiding my wife's last words to our children, by torturing 3 little boys who were already traumatized. Benjamin's voice broke. Get out of my sight. You can't just, I have rights. You have the right to remain silent. Marcus appeared in the doorway with another security officer until the police arrive. Mr. Whitmore asked us to detain you pending investigation. Evelyn looked around wildly, searching for an ally, an exit, anything, but there was nothing. Her carefully constructed empire was crumbling as security escorted her out. She passed Grace one final time. You have no idea what you've done, she hissed. This family needed structure, discipline. Without me, they'll fall apart. They already fell apart, Grace said quietly. Under your watch, we're just picking up the pieces after Evelyn was gone. The dining room felt different, lighter somehow. Despite the heaviness of what had just happened, Benjamin sank into a chair, his head in his hands. The boys were still clustered around Grace, confused and overwhelmed by the adult emotions swirling around them. I'm sorry, Benjamin's voice was muffled, broken. God, Grace, I'm so sorry. I should have believed you, should have seen what was happening. You were grieving. Grace sat down across from him, the boy settling into her lap and against her sides. You were doing your best with impossible circumstances. My best almost destroyed them. Almost destroyed you, but it didn't. Grace reached across the table, hesitating, then touched his hand briefly. We caught it in time. Benjamin looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. The letters. Can I see them? Grace pulled up the photos on her phone and handed it to him. He scrolled through slowly, his breath catching at Rachel's handwriting, at the dates, at the evidence of her love preserved in paper and ink. She knew, he whispered. She knew she might not make it, and she wrote them anyway, just in case. She wanted them to know her, Grace said softly. To hear her voice when they were old enough to understand. Benjamin pressed the heel of his palm against his eyes. Lucas, with that uncanny intuition children have, climbed off Grace's lap and went to his father, just stood there, small and solid, and leaned against Benjamin's knee. Daddy sad. His voice was tiny. Benjamin looked down at his son, really looked at him, and something fundamental shifted in his expression. He lifted Lucas onto his lap and wrapped his arms around the boy, burying his face in his soft hair. Yeah, buddy, Daddy's sad, but also, his voice cracked, also so happy because you're here and you're talking. And you're okay. Noah and Ethan exchanged glances, then scrambled over to join the hug. Benjamin pulled them all close, this man who'd been running from his grief for so long. Finally letting himself feel it, Grace stood up quietly, giving them space, but Benjamin's voice stopped her. Don't go. She turned back. Please, he said. Don't leave us again. Grace felt tears finally spill over, the ones she'd been holding back since yesterday. Since the accusation, since the moment she thought she'd lost everything. I wasn't planning to, she said. Not if you'll have me. Dr. Chun arrived an hour later, followed by the family attorney and 2 police officers. Grace walked them through everything, the footage, the letters, the systematic sabotage, the false allegations. She showed them her notebook with months of documentation, the receipts she'd saved, the photographs of evidence. The attorney, a sharp woman named Patricia Holloway, listened with increasing outrage. This is actionable on multiple fronts. Fraud, child endangerment, destruction of personal property. Harassment. I don't care about suing, Benjamin said. I just want to know why. Why would Evelyn do this? They found out when police searched Evelyn's quarters. In a locked drawer were more documents, financial records showing years of systematic theft from the household accounts. Small amounts, carefully hidden, adding up to hundreds of thousands of dollars. Evelyn had been embezzling, and Rachel had apparently discovered it shortly before her death. One of Rachel's letters, the one addressed to Benjamin, meant to be opened only in case of her death, confirmed it. My darling, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm so sorry. There's something you need to know about Evelyn. I found discrepancies in the accounts. I was going to tell you after the babies came, but if something happens to me, you need to investigate. Don't let her near our boys alone. Promise me. Benjamin read it aloud, his voice hollow. She knew, Rachel knew, and she was going to expose Evelyn, and then she died in childbirth, and everyone thought it was just tragedy, just bad luck. The coroner's report ruled it natural causes, Dr. Chun said carefully, complications from delivery. There was no indication of foul play, but Evelyn seized control immediately after, Patricia added. Positioned herself as indispensable during your grief, and hid any evidence that might have led you to question her. Grace thought about those early days, about Benjamin drowning in loss, while Evelyn quietly erased Rachel's presence from the house, hiding letters, controlling access to the children, making herself the sole authority. She didn't kill Rachel, Grace said quietly, but she used her death, built an empire on grief. The officers took statements, collected evidence, and eventually escorted Evelyn away in handcuffs. She went silently, her face a mask of cold fury, not looking at anyone. As the patrol car pulled away, Benjamin stood at the window with Grace beside him. How do I tell them? He asked. When they're older, how do I explain that someone they trusted was stealing from us, hurting them? The same way you'll give them Rachel's letters, Grace said, with honesty, with love, with the understanding that people are complicated, and sometimes the worst damage comes from those closest to us. Benjamin nodded slowly. Then he turned to her. Stay, please, not just for a week, not just until things settle. Stay and help me be the father they deserve. Grace looked at the 3 boys playing in the corner, already more relaxed, more themselves with Evelyn's oppressive presence gone. Yeah, she said, I'll stay. The days after Evelyn's arrest blurred together in a strange mix of relief and reckoning. CPS returned, but this time with Dr. Chun's detailed report documenting the boy's dramatic improvement under Grace's care and the evidence of systematic sabotage under Evelyn's management. Mrs. Ashford reviewed the security footage with an expression that grew progressively more horrified. "I owe you an apology, Miss Miller," she said stiffly when they finished. "The statements we received were deliberately misleading. They were lies," Grace corrected. "Not unkindly, coordinated lies from people who were either loyal to Evelyn or afraid of her, Mrs. Ashford nodded slowly. "We'll be interviewing all staff members again, and I'll be recommending that the case against you be closed with a formal notation of false allegations." It wasn't quite vindication, but it was close enough. The household underwent immediate transformation. Benjamin hired Patricia Holloway to conduct a complete audit, not just of the finances Evelyn had stolen from, but of every policy, every procedure, every decision she'd implemented over 8 years. What they found was damning. The staff members who'd signed false statements. Most had been coerced through threats of termination or manipulation. 2 resigned immediately out of shame. 3 others, the ones who'd actively participated in sabotaging Grace, were fired. The rest were offered the chance to stay under new management, with the understanding that honesty and transparency were now the only acceptable standards. Mrs. Patterson became interim house manager, bringing warmth and common sense to a role that had been wielded like a weapon for too long. "First order of business," she announced at the staff meeting, "is that we remember these are children, not problems to be managed. Anyone who can't treat them with dignity can find work elsewhere." Marcus was promoted to head of security with a raise in Benjamin's personal thanks for his role in exposing the truth. He accepted both with his characteristic quiet grace. Though Grace caught him smiling into his coffee the next morning, the physical changes to the house came next. Grace walked through each room with Dr. Chun and an occupational therapist named Sarah Kim, who specialized in sensory processing together. They created a home that actually worked for the boys' needs instead of fighting against them. The harsh overhead lights were replaced with warm, dimmable LEDs. Heavy curtains went up in the playroom and bedrooms, the kind that blocked stimulation when needed, but could be pulled back to let in natural light. They installed a proper sensory room with a swing, weighted blankets, textured wall panels, and soft floor mats. "This is incredible drive," Chun said, watching Ethan happily organize colored blocks in the new space, while Noah swung gently and Lucas built a pillow fort. "This is what therapeutic environment actually looks like." Grace had worked with Sarah to create visual schedules, laminated cards with simple pictures showing the day's routine. Morning cards were blue, afternoon yellow, evening purple. The boys could see what came next, prepare themselves mentally, feel some control over their world. The changes weren't just physical. Benjamin started attending a grief support group for widowed parents, something he'd resisted for years but finally accepted he needed. He came home from the first session red-eyed but lighter, like he'd finally given himself permission to be broken. "They told me grief doesn't have a timeline," he said to Grace one evening, both of them sitting on the floor while the boys played nearby, "that there's no should about it. I should be over it. I should be stronger. I should be able to do this alone." "You're not alone," Grace said quietly. "You never had to be." Benjamin looked at her, and something passed between them, an understanding that went deeper than words. They'd both been drowning in their own ways, both trying to save children from circumstances beyond their control, both learning that asking for help wasn't weakness, it was survival. 3 weeks after Evelyn's arrest, Grace made an unexpected decision. She asked Benjamin if she could visit Evelyn in jail. "Why would you want to do that?" Benjamin looked genuinely confused. Grace wasn't entirely sure herself. "Because I need to understand how someone gets to that place, where control matters more than children's well-being." "You don't owe her anything." "I know, but maybe I owe it to myself, to know she's not a monster, just a person who made terrible choices. That helps, somehow, makes it less scary." The jail was exactly as grim as Grace expected, concrete and fluorescent. Lights and the kind of institutional hopelessness that made her grateful she'd never ended up in a place like this herself. Though she'd come close a few times, Evelyn looked different without her armor of designer clothes and perfect posture, smaller, older, human in a way she'd never seemed before. They sat across from each other with a scratched plexiglass divider between them, speaking through phones that smelled like disinfectant and desperation. "Why are you here?" Evelyn's voice was flat, exhausted. "I wanted to understand," Grace said honestly. "How it got this far." Evelyn laughed, a bitter, broken sound. You want the villain's monologue? Fine. Rachel found out I'd been skimming money, not a lot, just enough to secure my future. I'd given 8 years to that family. 8 years of my life managing every detail, while Benjamin played CEO and Rachel played perfect wife. I deserved something for that. So, you hid evidence. Let them think she'd kept no records. I planned to stop after she died. Just disappear the documentation and move on. Evelyn's hands clenched. But Benjamin was such a mess. And those boys were nightmares, screaming, biting, destroying everything. Someone had to maintain order. They weren't nightmares. They were traumatized. Same difference. Evelyn met Grace's eyes. I tried, in the beginning, but nothing I did worked. They only got worse, so I adjusted my methods, structure, discipline, consequences, punishment. Grace corrected. You punished children for having needs you didn't understand, and you understood them. A waitress with no training, I listened, that's all. I paid attention to what their bodies were telling me. Evelyn was quiet for a long moment. Do you know what's funny? I actually believed I was helping. That if I just controlled the environment enough, managed their behavior properly, they'd become normal, manageable, easy. Children aren't supposed to be easy, they're supposed to be children. I know that now. Evelyn's voice cracked. Sitting in here with nothing but time, I know that now, but it's too late, isn't it? I destroyed everything trying to maintain control over something that was never mine to control in the first place. Grace felt an unexpected wave of compassion, not forgiveness, and that would take time, maybe forever. But understanding that pain creates pain. That Evelyn's rigid need for order probably came from her own chaos somewhere in the past. What happens now? Grace asked. Trial, prison, probably. Patricia Holloway is very thorough. Evelyn managed a ghost of her old professional smile. Tell Benjamin I'm sorry. Tell the boys. Tell them I thought I was doing right. Even if I was wrong, Grace left the jail feeling strangely settled. Evelyn wasn't a monster. She was a cautionary tale, a reminder that control is an illusion, and trying to impose it on others only breaks everyone involved. Back at the mansion, life continued to transform. Benjamin started working from home 3 days a week, setting up his office where he could hear the boys playing, where he could take breaks to check in, to read stories, to just be present. Grace enrolled in online courses: early childhood development, sensory processing, trauma-informed care. Benjamin insisted on paying for everything, calling it professional development, but they both knew it was more than that. It was investment in her, in the boys, in the family they were slowly, carefully becoming. Dr. Chun started bringing his own kids over for playdates, structured, carefully monitored ones where the boys could practice social skills in a safe environment. Sarah. Kim came twice a week for occupational therapy sessions that looked like play, but were actually sophisticated interventions. The boys flourished. Lucas started speaking in full sentences. Noah's biting incidents dropped to 0. Ethan still needed his routines, but he was learning flexibility, accepting that sometimes Blue Tuesday could happen on Wednesday if needed. They still had hard days. Days when sensory overload hit, despite all the accommodations. Days when grief ambushed Benjamin and he had to lock himself in his office and just cry. Days when Grace wondered if she was really qualified for any of this, but they also had good days. Days when all 3 boys laughed at the same silly joke. Days when Benjamin tucked them in and they actually wanted him to stay. Days when Grace looked around and realized she'd somehow, impossibly, found a home one evening after the boys were asleep. Grace and Benjamin sat in the newly renovated garden, the one they'd transformed from formal hedges into a sensory wonderland with wind chimes and textured plants and quiet spaces to just be. I talked to Patricia, Benjamin said, about making your position official. Salary, benefits, formal contract, whatever title you want. Nanny feels wrong, somehow. What about family? Grace suggested quietly. Benjamin turned to look at her, the garden lights catching in his eyes. Yeah, he said, his voice rough with emotion. That works. He reached for her hand, and this time Grace didn't hesitate. She took it, feeling the warmth of his palm against hers. The calluses that matched her own from all the work they'd been doing, physical and emotional. They sat like that for a long time. 2 broken people who'd found each other in the ruins and decided to build something better. 3 months after Evelyn's arrest, Grace woke to sunlight streaming through curtains she'd actually chosen herself. Soft cream fabric that filtered light. Without blocking it completely, the room was hers now. Not just borrowed space. Her books on the nightstand, her photos on the dresser, her life. Taking root, she could hear movement downstairs, Benjamin's voice reading something in his patient, measured tone followed by Lucas's delighted giggle, a sound that still made her chest tight with gratitude every single time. Grace pulled on jeans and one of the soft cotton shirts she'd learned to prefer, nothing scratchy. Nothing with tags, solidarity with the boys, even in her own wardrobe choices, and headed down to what had become her favorite part of the day, morning routine. Together, the kitchen smelled like Mrs. Patterson's cinnamon rolls and fresh coffee. Benjamin sat at the table with all three boys, each with their color-coded plates, blue for Ethan, green for Noah, yellow for Lucas. He was reading from a picture book about trucks. And all three were actually listening, engaged in their own ways. Ethan traced the shapes of the wheels with his finger. Noah rocked slightly, self-soothing while he processed the story. Lucas leaned against Benjamin's arm, thumb in his mouth, eyes wide. Grace paused in the doorway, not wanting to interrupt the moment. This was what she'd been fighting for. Not perfection, not normal, just connection, peace. A father learning to be present, children learning to trust. Benjamin looked up and smiled, the kind that reached his eyes now. "Morning, coffee's fresh, you're my hero." Grace poured herself a mug and sat down. Lucas immediately climbed from Benjamin's lap to hers, settling in like he'd always belonged there. "Grace, trucks go fast?" he asked, pointing at the book. "Some do, some go slow. Depends on what they're carrying. Heavy things go slow, smart kid." Grace kissed the top of his head. "Very heavy things go very slow." They finished breakfast as a unit, comfortable, routine, predictable in the ways the boys needed. After, Benjamin cleared plates, while Grace supervised toothbrushing, a process that used to take 45 minutes of screaming and now took 10 minutes of silly songs and gentle encouragement. Small victories everywhere. "I have to go into the office today," Benjamin said, as Grace helped Ethan into his shoes, the ones with Velcro instead of laces, because fine motor skills were still developing, and that was okay, but I should be home by 4. Sarah's coming for Odd at 3, right? 3:30. And Dr. Chun's stopping by at 5 to check on Noah's progress. Benjamin nodded, then hesitated. "Grace, can we talk? After the boys are with Sarah." Something in his tone made her stomach flip. "Sure. Everything okay? Yeah, just something I want to discuss." He left for work after hugs all around, something that would have been unthinkable 4 months ago. The boys barely flinched at the transition now, secure in the knowledge he'd be back. Grace spent the morning doing what had become her unexpected passion, learning. She'd finished 2 online courses already, one on sensory processing disorders, another on trauma-informed care. Currently, she was working through a class on child development psychology, taking notes in a fancy notebook Benjamin had given her. "For all the important stuff," he'd said. "Your observations are worth documenting properly." The boys played nearby in their sensory room, space that had transformed from unused library to therapeutic wonderland. Soft mats, weighted blankets, a swing that Noah loved, shelves of carefully organized toys arranged by texture and type. Lucas was building with foam blocks. Noah swung gently, eyes half closed in that meditative state he reached when he needed to regulate. Ethan sorted colored bears, making patterns only he understood, but that clearly made sense in his beautiful, organized mind. Grace watched them and thought about how far they'd come. Lucas speaking in full paragraphs now, Noah going entire weeks without a single aggressive incident. Ethan learning that sometimes patterns could change and the world wouldn't end. Her phone buzzed. A text from Benjamin. The foundation paperwork went through. "Official launch next month. Still want to be on the board." Grace's heart squeezed. The foundation, Benjamin's project to create training programs for caregivers working with children who had sensory processing challenges. He'd asked Grace to help design the curriculum, to be one of the faces of the organization. "You're living proof," he'd said, "that credentials matter less than compassion. But compassion paired with proper training, that's how we change lives." She texted back, "Absolutely. Though I still think I'm unqualified." His response came immediately. "You're the most qualified person I know. You lived it. That counts." Sarah Kim arrived at 3:30 on the dot, her bag full of therapeutic tools, and her energy infectious. The boys adored her. She was fun and firm in equal measure, pushing them just enough to grow without overwhelming them. "Grace, you want to observe?" Sarah asked. "I'm working on bilateral coordination with Noah today. I'll take notes." Grace watched Sarah guide Noah through exercises that looked like games crossing midline. both hands working together, building neural pathways through play. It was fascinating, watching therapy that didn't feel like therapy afterward. While Sarah packed up, she pulled Grace aside. "You know you could do this, right?" "What I do?" Grace blinked. "The therapy. I'm not an aunt, not yet, but you could be. With your intuition and the training you're already doing." Sarah smiled. "I'm just saying you'd be amazing at it." The thought lodged itself in Grace's mind like a seed. Could she actually pursue this professionally? Not just as survival, but as calling doctor. Chun's visit was quick, just a check-in to review Noah's progress and adjust some recommendations. He spent most of the time praising Grace's documentation, the detailed notes she kept about triggers and successes. "This is clinical quality observation," he said. "Have you considered publishing? A case study on successful intervention. I'm not a researcher. You're a practitioner. That's better." He closed his tablet. "Think about it. Your story, the boy's story, could help a lot of families after he left." Grace sat in the quiet house, ideas swirling. Boys were having quiet time in their rooms, a routine they'd built together, 30 minutes of rest that let everyone recharge. She could hear soft music playing from Lucas's room, the gentle thunk of Ethan's favorite fidget toy, the creak of Noah's weighted blanket being arranged just so. Benjamin came home at 4:15, apologizing for being late, though he wasn't really. He found Grace in the study, surrounded by her notes and half-finished coursework. "Hey," he said softly. Ready to talk, Grace closed her laptop. "You're making me nervous, don't be." He sat across from her, hands clasped, looking both excited and terrified. "I've been thinking about us, this arrangement we have." Grace's heart started pounding. "Okay, you're amazing with the boys. More than amazing. You've transformed their lives." "Transformed my life." Benjamin met her eyes. "But this employer-employee thing feels wrong." "Has for a while now, Benjamin. Let me finish." He took a breath. "I'm not good at this. At feelings, at being vulnerable. Rachel used to joke that I could negotiate million-dollar deals, but couldn't tell her I loved her without a script." Grace felt tears prick her eyes at the mention of Rachel, at the trust it took for him to bring her into this moment. "But I need you to know that you're not just the nanny, not just the caregiver. You're your family, Grace, to me and to the boys, and I'm falling in love with you. And I need to know if there's any chance you might feel the same way." The words hung in the air between them. Vulnerable and terrifying and beautiful. Grace thought about the first night she'd walked into chaos and decided to stay, about every fight, every small victory, every moment she'd chosen these boys over the easier path of walking away, about Benjamin learning to be present, to grieve openly, to trust again, about how somewhere along the way she'd stopped just surviving and started living. "I fell in love with you watching you read to your sons," she said quietly, "watching you learn their language, watching you choose them every single day, even when it was hard, even when you were scared." Benjamin's breath caught. Yeah. Grace smiled through tears. "I love you, all of you, this whole chaotic, beautiful, impossible family." He stood and pulled her up with him, and then they were kissing, soft and careful and full of promise. It tasted like coffee and hope, and the kind of future Grace had stopped letting herself imagine years ago. A throat cleared in the doorway. They broke apart to find 3 little boys staring at them with varying expressions of curiosity and confusion. "Daddy kissing Grace?" Lucas asked. Benjamin looked at Grace helplessly. "Yes." "Why?" Ethan wanted to know. Grace laughed, the sound bubbling up from somewhere deep and genuine. "Because we like each other very much, like we like pancakes?" Noah asked. "Even more than pancakes," Benjamin said solemnly. Noah considered this. "Wow. That's a lot." They ordered pizza for dinner, plain cheese for Noah, pepperoni for Lucas, veggie for Ethan, and half of each for the adults. They ate in the garden, watching fireflies start to emerge as dusk settled. "Tell the story again," Lucas demanded. About Grace and the crying. It had become his favorite. The story of how Grace had first calmed them, how she'd used breathing and music and patience. He never tired of hearing how he'd been brave, how all of them had been brave. "Once upon a time," Grace began, "there were 3 boys who were very, very sad." Benjamin watched her tell the story, watched his sons hanging on every word, and felt something he hadn't felt in 4 years. Complete, not healed, grief didn't work that way, but whole enough to hold joy alongside the sadness. Whole enough to love again, without betraying the love he'd lost later. After the boys were asleep and the house was quiet, Benjamin and Grace sat on the porch swing, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. "We're really doing this?" she asked. "Building a life together if you want to," he said. "I know it's complicated. I come with baggage. We all have baggage. That's what makes us interesting." Grace tilted her head to look at him. "I want this, want you, want them, want the whole messy, beautiful thing." Benjamin kissed her forehead. "Then let's do it. Together, somewhere inside." One of the boys, probably Noah, cried out in his sleep. They both tensed, listening, but the cry faded back into peaceful quiet. "False alarm," Grace whispered. "For now," Benjamin agreed. "There'll be more. Hard days ahead, definitely. Worth it, though." Grace smiled. Absolutely worth it. The morning of the triplets' 5th birthday arrived with unseasonable warmth and a sky so blue it looked painted. Grace woke early, her stomach a tangle of excitement and nerves, and found Benjamin already up, sitting on the edge of their bed. A reality she still marveled at, staring at a small wrapped box. "You okay?" She touched his shoulder gently. "Rachel bought this." His voice was rough with sleep and emotion. "Before she died, for their 5th birthday. I found it in storage last week." Grace sat beside him, not speaking, just present. They'd learned this dance over the past months, how to hold space for his grief without it consuming them, how to honor Rachel's memory while building something new. "What is it?" she asked softly. "I don't know." She left a note. Benjamin unfolded a piece of paper, his hands trembling slightly. Said to open it on their 5th birthday, together with whoever was caring for them. He looked at Grace. "She meant you, somehow. She knew someone like you would come." Grace felt tears prick her eyes. "You don't know that." "I do." Benjamin kissed her temple. "She always said the universe has a funny way of providing what we need, even if it's not what we planned for." They opened the box together. Inside was a beautiful brass compass engraved with words that made Grace's breath catch. "Not all who wander are lost. Love them through the journey. R.W.J. She knew." Benjamin whispered that they'd be different, that they'd need someone willing to navigate with them, not force them onto some predetermined path. Grace held the compass, feeling its weight. "We're doing that. Together, Benjamin agreed. Downstairs, Mrs. Patterson was already orchestrating breakfast with military precision, tempered by genuine affection. The kitchen smelled like pancakes and bacon and the special strawberry muffins Lucas loved. "The decorators finished the garden an hour ago," she reported. "It looks like something out of a fairy tale. The boys are going to lose their minds, in a good way." Grace peeked out the window and gasped. The garden had been transformed into a sensory wonderland. Colorful ribbons hung from trees, moving gently in the breeze, visual interest without being overwhelming. Several fabric forts had been set up in shaded areas, each one a quiet refuge if anyone needed to escape. There were tables with activities, finger painting stations, a water play area, building blocks of every texture and size. "It's perfect," Grace breathed. "You're perfect," Benjamin murmured, coming up behind her. "This whole thing was your idea." "Our idea," she corrected. "You're the one who insisted on the sensory-friendly face painting and the noise-canceling headphones at every station." They'd learned together how to celebrate in ways that honored who the boys were, rather than trying to force them into traditional party molds. Small guest lists, structured activities with clear transitions, plenty of escape routes, everything carefully planned to be joyful without being overwhelming. The boys thundered down the stairs at 7:30 sharp, their wake-up time. Consistent as clockwork because routine still mattered. All three stopped dead at the sight of the birthday banner Mrs. Patterson had hung. 5, Lucas shrieked. His communication explosion over the past months, still a daily miracle. "We're 5 today. That's a big number," Grace agreed. Crouching down to their level. "How does it feel?" "Bigger," Ethan said seriously. "I feel bigger." Noah just grinned and launched himself at Grace for a hug that nearly knocked her over. Physical affection still surprised him sometimes, like he couldn't quite believe it was allowed, was safe, was wanted. The morning passed in a blur of carefully orchestrated joy. Breakfast with special birthday pancakes shaped like the boys' favorite things by Mrs. Patterson's skilled hands. Trucks for Lucas. Bears for Noah. Perfect circles for Ethan because he'd requested round pancakes with adorable specificity. Dr. Chun arrived at 10 with his 2 kids, Emma and Jack, who'd become genuine friends with the triplets through months of structured playdates. Sarah Kim came with her partner and their dog. a gentle golden retriever trained as a therapy animal who let the boys pet him at their own pace. Marcus showed up in civilian clothes, looking uncomfortable without his uniform but smiling when Lucas grabbed his hand and dragged him to see the fort setups. "This is incredible," Marcus said. Surveying the garden, Daniel would have loved something like this. Grace squeezed his arm. "He's here in spirit. Everything we learned from you about what he needed. It's all here." The party was small, just 12 people total, which was exactly enough. No overwhelming crowds, no overstimulating entertainment. No pressure to perform or be normal, just people who loved the boys exactly as they were, celebrating them exactly as they were. Grace watched Benjamin help Ethan build an elaborate block tower, both of them completely absorbed in making sure the pattern was just right. She saw Noah chase drive Chun's kids around the garden, his laughter high and free. She saw Lucas sit quietly with Sarah, both of them finger painting with intense concentration. This was what love looked like, around 3. After cake, 3 small individual cakes, vanilla for Lucas, chocolate for Noah. Vanilla with chocolate frosting for Ethan, because compromise was a developing skill, and presents carefully chosen. Nothing too stimulating, everything meeting specific interests. Benjamin called for attention. "Hey guys," he said, crouching down with the boys gathered around him. "I have something special. From your mom." The garden went quiet. Even the adults fell still, sensing the weight of the moment. Benjamin pulled out the compass and showed it to them. "Your mom bought this before you were born. She wanted you to have it today, on your 5th birthday, to remind you that it's okay to wander. It's okay to be different. It's okay to take your own path." Lucas touched it reverently. Mamas, Benjamin confirmed, his voice thick. "She loved you so much. She wanted you to know that wherever you go, whatever journey you take, you're not lost. You're exactly where you need to be." Ethan studied the compass with his characteristic intensity. "Where does it point?" "North," Benjamin said, "but the important thing isn't the direction. It's that you get to choose where you go, and that you've got people who'll walk with you no matter what." Noah looked at Grace. "You'll walk with us." Grace felt her heart crack open. "Buddy, I'm not going anywhere. I promise, forever promise, forever promise." Benjamin reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box, looking at Grace with an expression that made her breath catch. "Actually, about that forever thing." Benjamin Grace's voice came out as a whisper. "I know we've only been together 6 months. I know this might seem fast." He opened the box, revealing a simple gold band with 3 small stones, blue, green, and yellow, the boys' colors. "But we've been through more together than most people experience in years. You've been my partner, my co-parent, my best friend. You've taught me how to be present, how to love openly, how to build a family on foundation of acceptance instead of expectations." He got down on one knee right there in the garden, surrounded by their people, while 3 5-year-olds watched with wide, fascinated eyes. "Grace Miller, will you marry me? Will you be theirs officially and mine forever?" Grace couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. She just nodded, tears streaming down her face, and let him slide the ring onto her finger. The boys erupted in confused but excited cheers. The adults applauded. Mrs. Patterson was openly crying. Marcus raised his coffee thermos in a toast. "Daddy and Grace getting married?" Lucas asked, tugging Benjamin's sleeve. "If she says yes," Benjamin confirmed. "Yes," Grace managed, her voice cracking. "Yes, yes, yes." Lucas considered this, then nodded decisively. "Good. Grace should stay forever," Noah added. "With us," Ethan finished. Benjamin pulled all 4 of them into a hug. Grace and the 3 boys. This family they'd built from grief and hope and stubborn refusal to give up. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy, but it was theirs. As the party wound down and the sun started to set, Benjamin disappeared briefly and returned with one more surprise, a refurbished version of Rachel's locket. "Now on a delicate chain, for you," he said to Grace. So her song continues. Grace's hand shook as she put it on. "Benjamin, I can't. This was Rachel's, and she left it for whoever loved our boys enough to hear what they were saying when they couldn't use words." Benjamin fastened the clasp. "That's you. She'd want you to have it. Later." After the guests had left and the boys were winding down in their fort, Grace pressed the locket. The familiar melody drifted across the garden, and Lucas perked up immediately. The mama song. He scrambled over. "Grace, sing. Grace, sing," Noah echoed, climbing into her lap. Ethan just leaned against her side, his breathing already evening out into almost sleep. Grace sang softly, the words she'd learned by heart now. Sleep now, my darlings. The moon's shining bright. Mama will hold you all through the night. Dreams will come find you on whispers of wind. And when morning comes, we'll laugh and begin again. Benjamin sat beside them, his arm around Grace's shoulders. Watching his sons finally at peace, the wind picked up, moving through the ribbons still hanging in the trees. And for just a moment, Grace could have sworn she heard another voice harmonizing with hers. Thank you, she thought, for loving them first, for leaving breadcrumbs that led me here, for trusting that someone would come who could hear what you were trying to say. A breeze rustled the fabric of the forts, warm and gentle like a touch. Like a blessing. She's here, Benjamin whispered. Isn't she? Yeah, Grace agreed, she is. And she's happy. Lucas yawned hugely. Can we sleep in the garden? Absolutely not, Grace said. But she was smiling. But we can have breakfast out here tomorrow, with the round pancakes, with whatever pancakes you want. They carried the boys inside together, a team now in every way that mattered. Grace tucked each one in with their preferred routine. Lucas with his story, Noah with his weighted blanket, Ethan with his stuffed bear arranged at exactly the right angle. Before leaving Noah's room, Grace paused. There, on his nightstand, was a drawing he'd made during the party. 4 stick figures holding hands, 3 small, 1 tall, and 1 with long hair above them. In Emma's careful printing, because Noah had asked for help with spelling. It said, "In my family." Grace's eyes filled with tears for what felt like the 100th time that day. Benjamin found her there, gently crying in the darkened hallway. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. Happy? He asked. So happy it's scary, Grace admitted. What if I mess this up? What if we'll mess it up together? Benjamin said. And then we'll figure it out together. That's what family does. Grace turned in his arms and kissed him, tasting salt and joy and the future they were building, one careful choice at a time. Somewhere in the house, the Lockett's melody played one final time as the music box wound down. And in the quiet that followed, Grace could almost hear Rachel's voice one last time. Thank you. Love them well. I will. Grace promised the darkness, the memory, the ghost of the woman who'd started this journey. We will, together. They walked toward their bedroom, toward tomorrow, toward forever, toward all the beautiful chaos that lay ahead. The wind chimed through the still open windows, carrying the scent of strawberries and hope, and Grace knew they were home.